Good day. My name is Michael Molondo. I'm going to look at the issue, at the subject, SA40D4, where I'm going to discuss. It's going to be covered into the social anthropology. So the title is wrong. It's actually social anthropology, where we're going to look, which is SA40D4. So we're going to look at two parts. The first part of the social anthropology, SA40D4. We're going to look at the preparation for your exam. How are you going to prepare for the examination? And then also what is expected from you during the exam. So remember, this is social anthropology, SA40D4. And when you're going to write the exam, it's always better to be prepared at least 2 months before you're going to write the exam. So I will advise that you draw up a timetable to prepare for the social anthropology examination. And then during these 2 months or even 1 month, you have enough time to read through all your subjects, your manuals. And then also during this time is you want to have a better understanding on the content and the context of the subject. So this is the time where you will make notes and remember some keywords, especially in the social anthropology subject, and some of the concept which can be very difficult to understand. And then a week or 2 weeks before you're going to write, to do revision, or 2-3 days before to make revision. And then when you are there during the exam and you've got the exam paper in front of you, it's always good just to read through all the questions. Once you have read through all the question, then you have to secondly select the question that you understand. And once you have selected the question which is easier for you, you read through the question to understand, and then of course you answer the question and you don't interpret the question itself. So I'm quickly going to go through the content of the social anthropology subject, the scope. This time is not, the purpose of this presentation is just to give you a guidance. I will still encourage you that you have to go through your manual. You can go and read additional information. It's better to have an understanding of the whole subject, the content of the subject, than just focusing on the examination scope. So read, prepare, read the whole manual, read additional information, search the internet, go to the library just to have a better understanding of what is expected. Now, the first thing is we're going to look at indigenous people, which is the San people. And this is where you are going to look at the how HIV/AIDS is relevant or is linked to people, minority group, indigenous group like the San people. And then is it extinct? Is it a threat to people that are actually, like for example the San people? You can also look at other indigenous group in Namibia. You can look at the Himba, also what role does HIV play to them. And so this is something that you can discuss in your paper or in your submission. Then secondly, you're going to look at kinship. You have to define what is kinship. What role does kinship play when it comes to family? Now, kinship or family plays a different role or has a different interpretation, depends on the context and the background of its a certain culture or a norm. So you have to discuss kinship in the context of a different tradition, the culture, how the interpretation of kinship is when it comes to certain culture. Some cultures don't have nieces, nephews, and cousins. Some cultures they only take if you are close to me, you are my brother, you are my sister. So this is very important that you need to know at least how does kinship, what role does kinship play when it comes to culture and norms. So the interpretation of kinship can be different, as I said, and you have to look into it and describe it. Now, kinship can also play a very important role, especially when it comes to marriage. You have different cultures that practice different marital. They've got a different marital practice, and what role does kinship really play when it comes to this kinship? And then, of course, you can also discuss kinship and health. How does kinship influence positive health or negative health factors within within a culture or an organization or in a country? So you have to discuss that in detail. Then, of course, there is the whole aspect of anthropology. Now, as I say, this subject is about social anthropology. How does anthropology, what role does anthropology play? Anthropology is the study of humankind, the study of societies, it's a study of communities. Now, what role does this study have on HIV/AIDS? So you have to create that link between anthropology and HIV/AIDS, and how important is anthropology to have an understanding on the norms, the culture, the tradition, the practice of a certain community. And how does this practice or this norm play? And then also you can also bring examples on harmful practices of certain communities. Because many of these harmful practices actually can encourage the spread of HIV/AIDS. Now, anthropology is very important, so you have to give a submission on how important is anthropology when it comes to HIV/AIDS and what role does it play. You can also discuss the different framework of anthropology, the different school of thoughts of anthropology, and then also looking in the context of Namibia. When we look at the studies of communities. Now, communities are actually a group of people that are having a common goal, a common belief, a common practice. Now, you as an anthropologist, when you are going to study a certain group, looking at the practice and the behavior, you have to see how does these practices have a link to HIV/AIDS and also other AIDS-related sicknesses and so on. So discuss it in detail. If it's a 20-mark question, then of course remember you don't just read a paragraph, you need to write at least a page and a half or 2 pages on this whole aspect of anthropology. So at this stage I will encourage you to go and study, look at the internet, other resources on what anthropology is all about. Why do we need anthropology? The importance of anthropology in the light of current health threats and outbreaks. So you have to discuss and look into it in detail. And then of course the other thing is then human development. Human development is looking at Homo sapiens, is looking at us as human and how humans have developed throughout the ages. From the origin where humans have started, and this is also good if you can look at the origin of humanity. You can have 2 schools of thoughts. You can have the creationist theory, where people believe that how humans start from a biblical point of view. You can also give the humanistic point of view about the origin of humanity. So you have these two schools of thoughts, the humanistic worldview and the biblical worldview on the origin of human. So as long as you can give your argument and your explanation, if you can believe. And then as part of the human development, you're not just going to look at the origin of humans, you're also going to look at the behavior of humans. what made humans to behave differently throughout the years. From the medieval ages, or even before the medieval ages, where you have the nomadic age, or the ice, or even before the ice age, where you have the nomadic culture where humans used to move from one place to another. How did that actually have an impact and effect on their behavior? What made humans to behave in a certain way? What made humans to become scavengers, to become hunters, and then from a hunter they become what we call patriarchals, or farmers. In husbandry, they start to hunt animals. Suddenly now they are managing, or they become farmers of animals, or they go from hunting animals to becoming vegetarians. So what made humans to evolve throughout the ages, and what influence did this evolution had on the behavior of people? So even the physical factors of human, there is the humanistic theory or world point of view, which is based on the theory of evolution by Darwinism, which says that man came from an ape, from an amoeba to an ape, and man evolved from an ape stage, or from a monkey stage, to the current stage of humanity. So also discuss that human development. You can bring out the different aspect. What made us? Was man always the way we are right now, or did man originated from a monkey, or from an animal? So this is something you can look at. Then you look at the development of society, social development. What makes us to society to evolve? Where you had a village, but now you've got a town, and from a town you've got a city. Now how does community evolve when it comes to the social aspect, society? And then, of course, culture played a very big role in society and in the social domain, affect the social dynamics of human beings. So when you look at the social cultural factors and the development of the social cultural factors, how did that influence humanity? What impact did it have on humanity? So you have to discuss that in detail. So human development is a very important aspect and a very important subject in anthropology itself. So you have to discuss it. And then, of course, we're going to look at sex and sexuality, sex and reproduction. So why in the past that sex was only perceived as a way of reproduction, and then you look at sex and reproduction in the Asian society, medieval society. What was the perception of sex and reproduction? And reproduction only means is to produce children. So it was the way of cohabitating and then bringing forth children. So this is something that you have to discuss also in detail. What made human beings during the ancient time and up to the modern time. So as part of the human evolution, the perception of sexual reproductive health, and now the modern perception on reproductive health, how does it differ? So discuss that in detail, how important it is. And then, of course, the human cultural trait. Now, as I said earlier, that culture has a very big, important role to play, and we are because of our culture. So we are a product because of culture, and that makes us to practice or to behave in certain way. So now in your discussion or in your submission, talk about what culture is. What are the different cultural traits? And how does culture have an influence on humanity? And when you look at all of the, what are the characteristics that made humans as cultural beings? You can look at different tastes. You can compare it from the ancient up to the modern age. You can look at different, you can give examples of different culture within Namibia. You can explain the different culture in Namibia and so on. And then you can also compare it. Because when it comes to social anthropology, that human cultural traits are the pivotal, is more pivotal, and it's the pinnacle of humanity. And since the ancient time, the beginning, humans have been governed by culture, and as the human also evolved, so did cultural traits also evolve. So culture evolved with humanity. Now the question is, how important is culture? Is culture an asset, or is it a threat to human growth or to human development? So these are the example that you can also give, and where you can also look then in different in details how important it is when to have different human cultural traits. So it's very important that when you are going to prepare for your exam, that you look at all of this area. And as I said, the purpose of this presentation is just to give you guidance. It's just to guide you, to prepare you for your exam. So it is still expected from you to read through your manual, to look at additional information via it's in the library or via the internet, so that you can be ready and prepare for the exam. Thank you very much for listening to me, watching at me, and I wish you all the best for your exam. Thank you, and bye.